Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
So good morning. And I'm so happy to be here, and I just want to thank Reverend Harriet for this opportunity. And before I start, I just need to let you know I had my whole talk mapped out, and last night as I was reviewing things, Spirit said pivot. So I'm going to pivot, and I'm knowing it's all good. So with today's talk, it's on gentleness. And my pivot is gentleness is required for life as we move through loss, change, and grief. That's where we're going. So let's go. All right, so gentleness, let me define it in new thought terms. It has, at the core, is awareness, compassion, and gratitude for who you are and where you are. Now, those are terms we all know, but let me kind of define them differently. With awareness, I would offer to become the observer in your life when something's not going the way you want it to. Because sometimes we're in the thick of things, we can lose perspective, but if we can take a step back and say, okay, what's really happening? What's the truth? God is all there is. Right where I am, God is. Then there are facts. Maybe you've been given a diagnosis, a loss of job, something. Facts can change. The truth remains the same. Compassion. What if we were to show our adult selves the compassion we wanted when we were maybe 5 or 7? Because sometimes as adults, we can be very hard on ourselves, and that doesn't make the situation any better. So if we can show ourselves compassion like when we were a little child, it makes a difference. Gratitude. Sometimes we may be going through something and we can get ahead of ourselves. Whoa, what's happening next week? What's happening in the future? In this moment, how are you? In the moment, because the reality is all we have is the moment. So if we can be present to the moment versus getting ahead of ourselves or dwelling on the past that we can't change, in this moment, how are we doing? So that's the definition of gentleness that I'll be using for today. Okay. So if you know me, you don't know me, so let me share. I have an extreme personality. I'm all or nothing, right? So with everything I just said, let me share an unfortunate but a blessing of a story. One day I was coming home from work, and it was probably in the evening, and I had this kind of heavy work computer bag, and it's behind my front seat on the floor, and I had tinted windows. So I said, I live in a safe neighborhood. Let me leave it in here. The next morning, my niece tells me, someone's broken into your car. So my first thought is, oh, she's just messing with me. But then my sister tells me, no, Toni, someone's broke into your car. So I really think, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble. So I go, they've taken the bag. Now, my laptop was extremely old. They probably chunked it somewhere like, we broke in for this. But I had some patient information in my bag. So that's what made it really bad. So now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in some trouble. So I call our security person, and he is a grandpa. So he was like, are you safe? Are you okay? You know, just call the police. So I'm thinking, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And he had also told me the IT director would be calling me as well. So about 15 minutes later, the IT director calls. The energy was different. He's probably like half the age of my sweet grandpa, and he's barking at me. So the more he barked at me, the more kind of in shambles I become, which only irritated him more, that made me spiral more. So by the time I got off the call, I just know I'm getting fired. I've messed up, I'm getting fired. So because I have that extreme personality, I went from God is my source and supply. I'm getting fired, right? So I'm doing this dance. And this happened on a Tuesday. So on Thursday, my director tells me that the VP's coming on Monday. So I'm like, why is she coming? And she just comes periodically, but not that often. And my director's like, I don't know. So then I think, oh my God, she's coming to let me go. And when she's let people go in the past, she takes them out to lunch. So then I think, oh God, I don't want to go to lunch with her. And will it happen before the food comes or after the food comes? And if it's before the food comes, I'm not going to want to eat. Are we going to go in one car or two cars? It's going to be so awkward. And in the process, I'm calling people for prayer too, right? So I am a religious scientist, but still, we're kind of doing this dance. Now it's Sunday night, and I have this realization. Toni, she's not taking you to lunch. She's going to say, Toni, I want to see you in the bathroom, and I'm going to be the first person ever fired in a bathroom. Don't ask me where that came from. So now it's Monday. So I'm thinking, can I maybe not go in the office? Because if she doesn't see me, she can't fire me. But of course, I had a support group to facilitate, so I had to go in. Who do you think was the first person I saw when I walked in the office? The vice president. Do you know what she had the audacity to do? Toni, so good to see you. She gives me this big hug. And now my mind is racing. So when we disembrace, I say, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. I know. You know, that happened last week in another office, but how are you? And so she goes on her merry way, right? Now, I would love to say reality kicked in, because I go big, right? Do you know what my first thought was as she walked away? What kind of company do I work for if I'm not in trouble? That was my first thought. So now, finally, spirit kicks in. It's like, stop it and go to work. Now, why am I sharing that insanity? Because it was actually a blessing. Because it allowed me to see my hidden beliefs about myself. And while what I did was bad, and I take full responsibility, it's not the sum total of who I am. And I had negated my 8 years there and all that I brought to the job, and I was so focused on what I had done wrong. And even though I was going between knowing the truth and the facts, I didn't stay rooted in the truth. And how often do we do that in our lives? And so that's what made me think about loss and change and grief. Because when we go through something like that, it gives us the opportunity to check our belief systems. Because when things are going well, we're on, autopilot. But when something happens that shakes us up, that's when we have the opportunity to see, what is it I believe? And not just on Sundays. And the thing with this philosophy, it's not a matter of, oh, I've taken foundations, I'm good. Oh, I've become a practitioner, I'm good. Oh, I'm a minister, I'm good. For me, it's a daily work. And that's what I love about the deservability treatment. It's like if you're going to take something away, what are you replacing it with? And it's like almost having a garden, and you have to pull the weeds, for me, every day. It's not a matter of, okay, I pulled the weeds last week, I'm set. No, it's a regular, continual thing you have to do. And I like with Ernest Holmes, he has said, if we are to have an active faith, the faith of God, instead of merely having a faith in God, our thought must be centered in universal mind. We are convinced that under divine law, all things are possible if we only believe and work in conformity with the principles of that law. Such a faith does not spring full-orbed into being, but grows by knowledge and experience. And that made me think of the acronym of LIP, living in principle, or living in purpose. Because we all have a purpose, and it's up to us to discover what that is. Now, I talked about loss and change. And if you think about it, it's interwoven in our lives from the time we're born. We come out, we get spanked on the butt, right? And then as we're little kids, maybe we don't get a part in the play, or we don't make the baseball team, or we have that first heartbreak. There are all these losses. But who teaches us how to transform those losses? And in our philosophy, I think sometimes we can do a spiritual bypass, meaning, oh, just treat and move your feet. Oh, God is all there is. And there are feelings attached to each one of those losses. And so it's important to be able to lean into the feeling so we can lean through the feeling. And sometimes it may be anger. Why is this happening? Allow yourself to be in that place of anger. Maybe you're angry at God. If there's this loving God, why did I lose my spouse, my partner, my child? And so unless you're able to lean into it and acknowledge it, with loss, change, and grief, the pain comes when we try to avoid it. That's where the pain comes, versus if we can lean into it. And then a big part of loss and change is releasing who we think we are. And that can be hard, because if you've been a certain way for your entire life and then to have to look and see, who am I now? That's a huge question. And in our society, there's really not space for it. And we may have a best girlfriend and you lose, say, your mother. And you think, oh, my best girlfriend's going to be there for me because she knew my mom and we're right there together. But that best girlfriend is best friends with her mom. And your loss is too close to home for her. And she may not have the ability to say, emotionally, I can't support you. But she's going to say, oh, I'd love to come over, but I got to get my hair done. Now you're hurt because she's not there for you. And when we're going through loss and change, sometimes we have to release where the support comes from, because maybe you have a coworker who's just an acquaintance, but a year ago they lost their mom. And now they're there for you, but you're thinking, no, it has to come from my girlfriend. You have to be open to where the support comes from, because it may not be from the person you think, and it's not because they don't care, but they may not be able to do it. And the thing with grief and loss, none of us are taught how to do it. We experience it, we know we're sad, so a lot of times people don't have the tools to support us the way we need to be supported. So being open to the support wherever it comes from, and in rediscovering who we are, that can be scary, because as we get older, we're kind of set in our ways. And when we have a significant loss, we want everything to remain the same. And maybe you lose a spouse and you have adult children. So they go home, they have their normal. You go home, there's a feeling of emptiness because that person's not there. And that takes a while to kind of adjust to. And sometimes people will say, well, it was God's will. They're in a better place. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't help. So sometimes if someone's going through something, it may say, can I bring you a cup of coffee? Can I just sit in the silence with you? Knowing someone's there, but you're not expected to do something. And a lot of times people will say, oh, I want to reach out, but I don't know what to do. Be present. It's not about words. It's about being with someone in the midst of their loss or the change. That does so much. And if you know, oh, I just have to show up, I can do that. But when we think we have to either fix it or change it, we can't do that. But we can be present. So not only is it about being present and recognizing who am I now, but it's also making peace with what was. Because let's say if you had a challenging relationship with someone and they're no longer here, while they were here, you had that hope. Maybe I'll hear I love you. Maybe I'll hear I'm sorry. But once they passed, that hope goes. And people around you may say, well, your dad was never there for you anyway. Again, that doesn't help because you had the hope that he would say or she would say. So it's like, how do you reconcile those feelings? Because again, it's about the feelings. And so is forgiveness. And sometimes we'll say, I can never forgive what they did. That's okay. Acknowledge, when this happened, I felt this. And I'm not going to allow that to hurt me any longer. I'm not going to allow you to hurt me any longer. Because grief work, loss and change, it's not about the person that passed or the situation. It's about you. And a lot of times we think it's about the situation or the person. It's not, because that person's moved on. And we can harbor whatever happened or didn't happen. But now it's impacting our lives. And how do we be fully present in the moment if we're holding on to what happened in the past? And that's where the gentleness comes in. If we can have gentleness for ourselves, that awareness, what's really true. And again, being able to give voice to how you feel, because if we stay in our head, well, it's okay, and it's gnawing at you. It really isn't okay, but we kind of say that. Or when people say, well, how are you doing? I'm okay. Meanwhile, you're going crazy. You know, so the more authentic we can be, and maybe, I don't want to talk about it. Keep it real versus saying what people want to hear, because then they think, oh, they're fine. They're strong. They don't need any support. And it's usually the really strong ones that need the most support, because they're not allowed to show weakness. Because if they're weak, what does that mean for everyone else? And with grief, it's not a time to support others. It's like, you take an airplane ride and they say put on your oxygen mask first and then help the children or others. With grief, you have to take care of you. You don't have the bandwidth to say, okay, well, let me support the family, because now your grief gets put on hold. And they get to, have what they need. But you have to recognize you're just as important as everyone in your life. And you also get to model, what does it look like to deal with your feelings? So if you're a parent, to be able to say, I don't know. There's a power in that. But if you have the facade of everything's okay, then that trickles down. Whoa, okay, well, I better be okay because she's okay, and if I'm not okay, what does that mean about me? Versus, wow, this is really hard. This is uncomfortable. This is painful. That's the reality. And the fact that those feelings don't stay forever. And sometimes I tell people, if you can bathe and shower before 11:59 p.m., you're having a good, sometimes it's something as simple, and it may sound a little funny, but it's true. And sometimes it's simple things and things that you used to enjoy, you may not enjoy anymore, and be okay with that. And sometimes people almost literally stop living when the person they love passes, and now they're existing. Do you want to exist for 20 or 30 more years? No, life is too good. We had this family friend whose wife passed, and she had been gone for like 20 years, and we went over to their house. It was set up exactly like it was before she passed. Her clothes in the closet. He started dating someone. She couldn't do it because the deceased wife is literally still there. Just her body's not, and he didn't get it. And we can all have our own experiences. There's no right or wrong, but it was just like his joy left when she died. And I don't think that's what she would have wanted for him. And also when we lose someone, like in my story, how I negated all my good, Sometimes, especially if you've been caregiving for someone, you focus on everything you didn't do. Well, I should have made him go to the doctor sooner. I should have done this. I should have done that. And you negate all the things you did do. And if you're being a caregiver, there's no handbook for that. And it's not like a job where, oh, it's 5 o'clock, I'm off now. Caregiving is 24/7. And it takes a toll, even though you love the person. And that's why it's important to have that gentleness. You know what, I'm gonna go take a walk around the block, allow others to support you, because sometimes, again, we think, well, I'm the spouse, I'm the partner, I'm the parent, I've got to do it. No man's an island. We have to be able to say, you know what, I would love it. Can you sit for 2 hours, for an hour? How much time do you have? And a lot of times people will say, well, call me if you need anything. Be more, hey, do you have any cleaning that needs to be done? Any laundry? Give them ideas. So like, oh yeah, or oh, can you get me some milk? People appreciate that. And be open to asking for what you need. Because if you don't ask, people don't know. And that goes back to having that awareness and compassion for yourself to say, I need some support in this. And another thing with loss and change, aging. That's not an easy thing. And if you think about it, we're almost in this youth-obsessed society. And as you get older, it's almost like, what's your value? And that's one thing I love about hospice. I get to meet living history. People who have seen things, and it's just like, wow. We just had someone turn 104. 100, it's like, it's amazing, but we can miss that because, oh, they have gray hair, or, oh, they're slowing down. And how do we adjust when we start to slow down? Do we give ourselves the same grace? Or are we kind of beating ourselves up? I'm not getting it. I know with texting, it takes me like forever. Those young people, I'm like, whoa, I'm still on the first word, you know? But it's like, okay, I'm not a great texter. I can accept that. You know, and it's how things have shifted so much. I can call people to check in through bereavement, and if I don't get them, I'll send them a text and, hey, just checking in. They'll respond to the text. And I'm always like, I always think about texting as I'm running late, be there in 5. I don't view it as a communication tool, so that lets me know they really don't want to communicate. They want me to know they got my message and kind of like, I'm good. Okay, I still get paid, so okay. But you know, it's like we're almost not used to receiving support. And that's a little sad because we can all kind of stay in our little silos. But life is meant for so much more than that. So again, it's like, can we be open to receiving support? Can we be open to changing how we've always been? And it's a little bit of stepping into the unknown. And I know, at least for me, I can make the unknown kind of like the boogeyman. But what does that serve? And if God is our source and supply, why can't we step into the unknown? Because in the unknown is our better, our best. We can stay at good, but why not have our best or better? Because if we think about it, if we're all worthy of our highest good, are we willing to go for it? Do we have a belief in ourselves? Because I was talking to this gentleman whose wife had passed, and they had 3 daughters, 2 teenagers and 1 preteen. And it had been almost a year since she died, and he was starting to date. And he didn't care for he liked the woman, but he felt like she was playing games with him. And he's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. If I was younger, I wouldn't put up with this. But because he's a little older now, he was a little less sure of himself. And then one day he was talking, and he was saying, I was driving and I was at a stop sign, and I got so mad at my wife, and I said, why did you leave me? And then he said, I realized she didn't want to leave. And I think when people pass, it's not because they want to leave. They get tired. And while we may say, but you're doing good, today's a good day, we're not in their bodies. And when you've been poked and prodded or this treatment and that treatment, it wears on you. And so we have to know that's their path. And while we're going to miss them, we have to respect that. And there's that Right to Die Act. And some people are like, oh, you can't do that unless you walk in their shoes. And this one woman, she was doing it. She had breast cancer. And her loved ones were like, you just had a party. You look great. And her thing was, you're seeing me for 2 hours out of 24 hours. You don't see what I go through. So I don't think we can judge when people leave. And I think sometimes it becomes, who am I without this person? And I had this one woman, her husband, he was well accomplished, did everything, and he handled all the business in the family. And so before he passed, he was in a facility. So he wanted her to visit every day. And every day she brought this brown paper bag filled of all their bills and papers because he was going to get to it. And he never did. So when he first passed, she just sang his praises, how great he was. And he was a good guy. And by month 6, she kind of started to take him off the pedestal. Because when someone dies, we can put them on a pedestal, and then we're usually down here seeing what we didn't do, and they're so great. But when we can see all of the person, then we can accept all of ourselves. And also we can say, wow, what did they do really great? How can I incorporate that into my life in my style? Not to be just like them, but in my style. What do they do that's not so great? And does that show up in me? I know I never saw my mom balance a checkbook. Now, I'm sure she did. But guess who had an issue with their checkbook? Just saying. So it's important to be able to see the whole person so we can accept it. So with this woman, she started to say, you know, for the last 10 years, I wanted to fix my teeth. But my husband always said we didn't have the money. But he had the money for what he wanted. So she started seeing things a little differently. And then once the husband died, her son said, you know, Mom, I want you to come live with me and my family. And she was like, I don't want to live with him. I like it where I live. And the point of this is she started to find her voice, where she had always kind of, oh, it's all about him. And she loved him and he was a good guy. But she was slowly negating herself. And now she started to find her voice. And by the time we finished, she had gotten her new teeth. And she was so happy. And it was just, she had gotten some bill from Costco, and first she didn't want to call about it because she didn't know what to do. And it's like people get in their roles, and we just stay that way. And then when we have to kind of switch roles, that can be scary because we don't know. But she did it with a little bit of encouragement. I think the first time I was on the phone with her. So people just need a little encouragement, but they can do it. And that, again, is a part of the change. And holding that compassion for ourselves and just recognizing nothing in life stays the same. And on this spiritual journey, to know we are fully equipped with all that we need right here, right now. And it's like, do we know it? And with my little story, I knew it, but I didn't know it. And instead of staying grounded in the truth, I just swirled around, and who gets fired in a bathroom? Like how extreme I can take things. I was like, well, I worry myself sometimes, but that's not here nor there. So also knowing that perspective is everything. A simple shift of perspective from suffering to this will work out for me opens you up ever so slightly to breathe a little deeper. Remembering just for a moment that you are love in form gives you a distance from discomfort that allows answers, solutions, and opportunities. It allows you to recognize patterns and habits that no longer serve you and helps you to let go without judgment. And that's another important piece to loss and change is judgment. I don't think anyone can judge us harder than we judge ourselves. And again, does that really serve us? And usually it goes back to childhood, something that was said to you as a kid. And with me losing that computer, it really wasn't about the computer. It's about what were my beliefs about myself. And again, when we do that work, we get to look at it and say, why did I spiral down so hard? What am I holding about myself? And then we get to kind of change that. And it's almost kind of rewiring the circuits in our brain that we can do. And then it goes back to our spiritual principles. Are we staying in alignment with those? And again, worthiness, knowing that we are worthy right now. And it's something you constantly work on. It's not already made. And so it says also, yes, each one of us has had real trauma in our lives. Yes, we've all done despicable things, and in order to live our lives fully from this point forward, and we get to move beyond them, we get to practice self-compassion and forgiveness. I won't say who knows, but forgiveness is not about the other person or the situation. Forgiveness is about forgiving ourselves. It's about freeing ourselves. And we have to remember that. And even if it's not, oh, I can never forgive XYZ, can you acknowledge how that feels? And to say, I'm not allowing this power over me anymore. And it's not to have the person co-sign it, because you can go to the person and say, sis, I'm so mad at you, you did blah, blah, blah. That's not my experience. And now you're going back and forth at it. You don't need to go to that person. You just, what do I need to free myself? And that's a journey of self-discovery, because sometimes we don't know what makes us happy because we've always been on this certain path. And so to know, can I be open to trying different things? And if I go left and it doesn't feel good, go right. I went right, that didn't work. Okay, go straight. Nothing's in stone. And sometimes, well, how will it look if I'm rediscovering myself at this age? Who cares? You know, and one thing I know, I can get wrapped up in, oh, what will they think? Nobody is thinking about me. You know, it's like, I think I'm so important. I am important. We're all important. But, you know, it's like, we're free to do what we want. And it's like, it's our own judgments and thinking people are thinking about. Everyone's in their own world. You know, we're all doing our own thing. So it's like, can we let go of our own judgments and just be free to do what we want to do? And I know I can see other people who just go for it. And I think, well, how do they do that? One foot in front of the other. You know, they just go for it. And if it doesn't work, they just keep going. I remember out of college, I had this friend, we were both applying for a job, and let's say it took 5 qualifications you needed. Well, I had, say, 4. She had 3. She went for it. I'm like, but it said you have to have these 5. I'll learn it. Okay, who's the vice president now? But that's not here nor there. But you know, again, I get caught up in, oh, it has to be just so. Life is messy. It's not this neat and clean. And also, life isn't fair. We may want it to be. It really isn't. So it was up to us not to be defined by things and to go for what we want. And even when things don't work out, I wish I never lost that computer bag. But it allowed me to see myself in a different way and to become the observer and kind of dust off the deservability treatment. So there were blessings in it. And to know, oh, wow, yeah, I'm not defined by one event. And how often do we crucify ourselves? It doesn't take anyone to say anything to me. I got this. You know, and it's like, wait, no. And if God made us perfectly, and if everything we have, if everything we need we already have, what is stopping us from living the life we desire? What is stopping us? So again, to have gentleness with yourself, to remember awareness, compassion, and gratitude for where you are and who you are, because there's not another person on the planet just like you, and that's why life really is a gift, because all we have is the present. So let's pray. So I just invite us to take a deep breath in together. So in this moment, I know that there's one life, one power, one presence, known by many names, and in this moment, I choose to call it God. Knowing that the life of God is my life and the lives of each and every person within the sound of my voice. I, Toni Lynn Comier, speak my word with absolute confidence and conviction, knowing that what I declare is made manifest here and now. I declare that this day is a God-filled day, knowing that each one of us moves through this thing called life with absolute gentleness, knowing that we are worthy of all that we desire, knowing that we are capable beyond measure, knowing that this is our time, and that we just accept our good with grace and ease and absolute gratitude. For this and so much more, I give thanks. And I release my word to the universal law where I absolutely know it is done. And if anything I've said resonates with you, please help me anchor this prayer by saying, and so it is.
I walk in God in all